Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt a dull ache in your chest, not because of what you saw, but because of what you didn't? No fire, no edge, no ruthless clarity, just a soft, compliant version of what you could have been. Niccolo Machiavelli, the man whose name is synonymous with power and strategy, would look at you and say, "You are a dog, loyal, obedient, weak." And he wouldn't say it with anger. He would say it with indifference. Because weakness to a man like Machiavelli is not tragic, it is boring, it is beneath contempt. And yet, it is everywhere.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We live in a world that romanticizes softness. We are told that being kind, being agreeable, being nice is the highest virtue. But Machiavelli would spit on that idea. In The Prince, he wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if you have to choose." That line isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. It's about understanding that power, not approval, is the currency of life. And here's the brutal truth. Most of us are broke. We trade our power for comfort. We sell it cheap just to be liked. We act like dogs wagging our tails, hoping for scraps. But what if you stopped? What if you stopped licking the hand that feeds you and began thinking like a prince, not a politician, not a tyrant, but a sovereign of your own life? What if you understood that being feared doesn't mean being cruel, it means being respected, being decisive, being sharp? It means knowing your value so deeply that you never have to beg for approval again. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made a decision based on what was right for you, not what would make others comfortable? Machiavelli never said to be heartless. He said to be strategic. He understood human nature better than anyone. He knew that people will betray, lie, manipulate, often unconsciously. And if you walk through life with your head in the clouds, believing that everyone means well, you're not good. You're not noble. You're prey. You're the rabbit that thinks the wolf won't bite. But the wolf always bites. Let's go deeper. Look at your own life. How often do you say yes when you want to say no? How often do you stay silent when you should speak? How often do you tolerate disrespect? Because confrontation feels scary? That's weakness. And Machiavelli would say you deserve the consequences. Not because he's cruel, but because reality is cruel. Reality does not care about your feelings. It cares about results. There's a line from The Prince that cuts through all the nonsense. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few really know what you are. Do you understand what that means? It means your reality is shaped by perception, and perception is power. If you appear strong, people will treat you as strong. If you appear weak, they will exploit you, not because they are evil, but because it's human nature. So, what do you appear to be? Be honest. When people look at you, do they see someone who commands respect or someone who begs for it? Do they see someone who can walk away from any situation with dignity or someone who clings, whines, pleads? If you don't like the answer, good. That discomfort is your guide. It's a message from the version of you that Machiavelli would not call a dog. Let's make this even more uncomfortable. You think you're a good person. You think that's enough. But Machiavelli would laugh at that. He would say, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." In other words, stop hiding behind your labels, your job title, your degree, your good intentions. They mean nothing if you don't have the strength to enforce your will. You want to be respected. Then become someone who is not easily moved. Become someone who is not afraid to be disliked. Become someone who can say no without explaining, who can walk away without apologizing. And here's the paradox. When you do that, when you stop chasing approval, you gain it. Because people smell strength. They may not admit it, but they crave it. Deep down, they admire the one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't need the room to like them. The one who can sit in silence and still dominate the air. But here's where it gets really dark. Most people don't want you to be strong. Not really. Not because they hate you, but because your strength reminds them of their weakness. Your clarity forces them to confront their confusion. Your discipline highlights their laziness. So, they'll try to pull you back. They'll say you've changed, that you're arrogant, that you're too cold. And if you are still a dog, you'll listen. You'll crawl back into your cage, tail between your legs, whispering, "I just don't want to hurt anyone." But if you are no longer a dog, you'll smile. You'll understand that being feared and being respected are often the same thing. That being willing to be alone is the first step toward becoming unstoppable. And this is the real test. Can you walk away from comfort, from approval, from the herd, and still hold your head high? Or will you bark and whine until someone gives you a treat? Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He wasn't teaching cruelty, he was teaching clarity. He knew that the world is not fair, and trying to play fair in an unfair world is not noble. It's stupid. If you want peace, you need strength. If you want truth, you need courage. If you want respect, you need power. And power does not come to the meek. It comes to those who are willing to look at the world raw, bloody, and real and say, "I will not be a victim." So who are you really? Strip away the masks. Forget the affirmations. Forget the social media quotes. When everything is stripped bare, are you a lion or are you a lapdog? Do you lead your life or do you follow the leash? That question is not rhetorical. Sit with it. Let it burn. Because until you answer it with your actions, not just your words, you are still in the kennel. And here's the final brutal truth. No one is coming to save you. Not your parents. Not your boss. Not your partner. You are alone in this arena. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start fighting like hell. Not out of hate, but out of love. Love for your future self. Love for the truth. Love for the life you could have if you stopped compromising. The weak wait for permission. The strong take responsibility. The weak seek comfort. The strong seek growth. The weak want to be liked. The strong want to be respected. Which are you? Are you ready to stop being a dog? There's a moment in every person's life when they realize they've been living someone else's script. The words you speak, the decisions you make, the path you follow, it's all been handed to you by culture, by fear, by the need to be accepted. You think you're making choices, but you're just choosing from a list of approved options. That's not freedom. That's a leash. Machiavelli would say you are not living, you are being lived. You are not acting, you are being acted upon. And the worst part is, you don't even notice. Let's go deeper. Why do you care what people think of you? Be honest. Why does someone's opinion, someone who might not even respect themselves, have the power to change how you feel about yourself? That's psychological slavery. And the chains are invisible. You smile when you're angry. You nod when you disagree. You stay when your soul is screaming for you to walk away. That's not kindness. That's weakness. And Machiavelli would say, never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. But here's the twist, you're not deceiving others. You're deceiving yourself. You tell yourself you're being nice, that you're keeping the peace. But what peace? The peace of quiet resentment. The peace of internal decay. That's not peace. That's slow death. Machiavelli would not respect you. He would pity you, or worse, ignore you. Because in his view, the man who cannot stand alone is not a man at all. He is a pawn, a tool, a shadow. Let's be brutally real. Most people are addicted to approval. It's a drug more potent than heroin. And like all addicts, they will do anything for the next hit. They'll compromise their values. They'll silence their voice. They'll become chameleons, changing colors just to blend in. But Machiavelli would say, it is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. In other words, stop waiting for permission. Stop apologizing for existing. Stop shrinking. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped asking for permission and started claiming your space? What relationships would you leave? What career moves would you make? What truths would you finally speak? That version of you, the one who doesn't beg, doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, that's the real you. The rest is programming. The rest is conditioning. And Machiavelli knew that to lead others, you must first lead yourself. That means killing the coward within. You're not weak because you lack power. You're weak because you've been trained to fear it. You've been told that power corrupts, but that's not the whole truth. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. It shows you who you really are. And if you're afraid of becoming powerful, it's because you're afraid of facing the parts of you that have been buried under guilt, shame, and fear. But here's the paradox. The longer you avoid power, the more you suffer. Because when you lack power, you attract manipulators. You become their tool, and you call it love. Let's talk about cruelty. Machiavelli has been called ruthless, but read him carefully. He never said, "Be cruel for pleasure." He said, "Be cruel only when necessary." Why? Because mercy without strength is not mercy, it's surrender. It's weakness dressed as virtue, and people can smell it. They may smile to your face, but deep down they see you as soft. And softness, in a world of sharp edges, is a liability. There's a quote that should haunt you. A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests. At first that sounds immoral. But think deeper. He's not saying to be dishonest for fun. He's saying to not let blind loyalty destroy your life. How many times have you stayed loyal to people who wouldn't do the same for you? How many times have you kept promises that were killing you just to look honorable? That's not honor. That's self-betrayal. And Machiavelli would say that a man who cannot betray a broken agreement cannot lead. Because leadership is not about being liked. It's about making decisions that others are too scared to make. You want to be strong. Start by telling the truth, not just to others but to yourself. Tell the truth about your fears, your regrets, your compromises, the nights you couldn't sleep because you knew you were living a lie. That's where power begins, not in domination but in self-mastery. The man who knows himself cannot be manipulated. He cannot be pressured. He cannot be broken because he has already faced his own darkness and survived. People think Machiavelli was cold, but he wasn't. He was clear. He saw human nature without the filters. He understood that people are driven by fear, desire, and self-interest. And if you ignore that, you don't become good, you become vulnerable. You become the lamb in a world of wolves. You become the kind, soft-hearted fool who gets eaten alive and wonders why. Let me ask you something that should shake your soul. Who are you when no one is watching? When there are no likes, no applause, no validation, who are you? That's your real identity. Everything else is theater. And Machiavelli would say, the vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. So don't live for appearances. Build substance. Build depth. Build the kind of mind that cannot be seduced by flattery or destroyed by criticism. You think strength means yelling? Dominating? No. Strength is restraint. Strength is walking away from drama. Strength is saying, I don't need this. Strength is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. And that kind of strength terrifies people, not because it's aggressive, but because it's unshakable. You want practical advice? Here it is. Every day, do something that scares you, not for adrenaline, but for growth. Speak your mind in a room full of silence. Say no to something you've always said yes to. Walk away from anything that doesn't respect your time, energy, or soul. Stop explaining yourself. Let people misunderstand you. Let them gossip. Let them walk. Because if your life is built on pleasing others, you will never be free. Here's another: study power. Study how it moves. Study how it hides, how it seduces, how it manipulates. Not to abuse it, but to avoid being its victim. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in creating monsters, it was in exposing them. He showed us what leaders really do, how they think, how they choose. And if you want to lead your own life, you must think the same. Stop confusing weakness with virtue. Stop thinking that being agreeable makes you noble. It makes you forgettable. And deep down, you know that. You've seen strong people walk into a room and everything shifts. That's not magic. That's presence, that's power. And you can build it. But only if you're willing to let go of your addiction to being liked. And that's the hardest part, because being liked feels good. It's warm, it's safe. But it's a prison cell with velvet walls. If you want to be free, you must be willing to be misunderstood, to be feared. Not because you're cruel, but because you're uncompromising. You don't fold. You don't chase. You don't beg. And that makes people uncomfortable. But discomfort is the price of greatness. So, let me ask again, are you a lion or are you a lapdog? Not in theory, not in fantasy. In reality, when life punches you in the mouth, do you rise or do you roll over? When someone disrespects you, do you confront or do you justify? When your soul wants to scream, do you speak or do you swallow it? Machiavelli wouldn't care about your excuses. He would look at your results. Your life is your answer, not your words, not your dreams, your life. Look around you. That's your philosophy. That's your psychology. That's who you are. And if you don't like what you see, then good. You're awake. Your eyes open now. But the question is, what will you do about it? The moment you truly wake up, when you finally see the game for what it is, you can never unsee it. The masks fall off. The smiles become transparent. The fake kindness, the empty affirmations, the shallow validation, it all becomes noise. You start to realize that most people are not living, they are performing. And the performance is not for themselves. It's for the crowd. But Machiavelli would whisper to you, he who builds on the people builds on mud. The applause of the crowd is worthless if the foundation of your character is weak. So where do we go from here? You've seen the weakness, you've recognized the leash around your neck. Now what? You rebuild. But not with fluffy ideologies or feel-good quotes. You rebuild with steel, with fire, with the understanding that power is not something you find, it's something you forge. And it starts with one decision: to stop being ruled by fear. Fear is the architect of weakness. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being alone. But Machiavelli would tell you, the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The true master of life is both. He is cunning and courageous. He adapts without losing himself. He deceives only to survive, and he strikes only when necessary. That's not evil. That's evolution. You need to ask yourself if you're willing to be both. Are you willing to be strategic and strong, soft when it serves, sharp when it counts? Or are you stuck in the lie that you must choose between being good and being powerful? That's the trap, the false dichotomy. The truth is, you can be moral and ruthless, kind and unyielding, compassionate and cunning. In fact, to be truly effective in this world, you must be. But to become that, you have to kill the victim inside you, the part of you that waits to be rescued, the part that blames others, the part that keeps saying, if only they treated me better. Machiavelli would scoff at that. He would tell you, it is better to be adventurous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to master her, you must treat her roughly. That's not about violence. It's about boldness. Life bows to those who dare, not those who ask for permission. So what does this look like in the real world? It looks like setting boundaries that make people uncomfortable. It looks like walking away from relationships that drain you without guilt. It looks like taking risks that make your stomach churn because you know safety is slow suicide. It looks like standing firm in your truth, even when your voice shakes. It looks like losing people, opportunities, and comfort and gaining your soul in return. It looks like discipline. Daily, relentless, unsexy discipline. Machiavelli didn't believe in luck. He believed in preparation, in foresight, in control. He knew that the man who masters his impulses controls his destiny. So if you want power, start with your habits. Start with your body, your mind, your time. If you can't even control what you eat, what you watch, or who you text back, how will you ever control your fate? This is where most people quit, because the path to power is lonely. It's quiet. There's no applause, no cheering crowd. Just you, your thoughts, and the weight of responsibility. But Machiavelli would say, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. So look around. Who do you allow in your circle? Are they sharpening you or softening you? Are they challenging you or coddling you? The people around you are a mirror of your standards. You say you want change, but are you willing to let go of the identity you've built, the nice guy, the people pleaser, the agreeable one? That identity has kept you safe, but it has also kept you small. And Machiavelli would remind you, the one who adapts his conduct to the times will succeed, the one who does not will be destroyed. The world has changed. Strength is no longer optional, it is survival. Strength of will, strength of mind, strength of boundaries. These are your weapons, not to harm others but to protect your mission. Because you do have a mission, even if you've forgotten it. You were not born to be a dog sniffing for scraps. You were born to build, to conquer your inner chaos, to dominate your fears, to lead, not follow. And leadership starts with self-respect. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else? If you wouldn't trust your own decisions, your own word, your own discipline, then who are you? Machiavelli wouldn't sugarcoat it. He would look you in the eye and ask, are you fit to rule? Not others, yourself. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't need more knowledge. You don't need another podcast, another book, another guru. You need action, ruthless, consistent action, the kind that hurts, the kind that breaks your comfort and rebuilds your character, the kind that makes you look in the mirror and finally say, I respect that person. Because at the end of the day, no one can give you power. It cannot be inherited, gifted, or begged for. It must be seized. And Machiavelli would say, the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Don't wait, don't hope, don't wish, move, decide, act. And when you do, when you finally step out of the cage and into the wild, you will lose people. You will lose comfort. You will lose the illusion of safety. But you will gain something far greater. You will gain yourself, your spine, your soul, your sovereignty. You'll start to notice something strange. People will treat you differently. They'll listen when you speak. They'll feel your presence and silence. They'll respect your time, your word, your energy, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Power is not in the voice. It's in the posture, the eyes, the decisions made when no one is watching. So I'll ask you one last time, are you weak? Or have you simply been trained to be? Have you been conditioned, programmed, domesticated? Because if you have, there's no shame in that. But there is shame in staying there. There is shame in knowing you were meant to be a lion and choosing to stay a dog. Machiavelli's wisdom isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. About seeing the world not as we wish it were, but as it is. It's about realizing that weakness is not a virtue and strength is not a sin. It's the foundation, the crucible, the fire that forges the life you truly want. So what will you do? Will you return to the leash? Or will you step into the wilderness, claws out, unafraid? Because in the end, there are only two types of people in this world, those who follow and those who lead. Those who wait and those who act. Those who bark and those who build. Choose. And never forget, if you remain weak, Machiavelli would call you a dog. But if you rise, if you sharpen yourself, if you own your power, he would call you a prince.